Hey everybody, welcome to the newest episode of Capital Combat. Name says it all. I'm Hakeem Branch.
Rob Jarrell.
And today we're going to recap the big fight weekend of November 16th, which we had boxing. We had Andre Ward versus Edwin Rodriguez, and then we also had the 20th anniversary show UFC 167, which the main event was George St-Pierre versus Johnny Hendricks. We'll talk about a couple fights on that card, and because there was only one boxing match, we'll start with that. So, Rob, let's get them started with Rodriguez and Ward.
All right, so this fight was with Andre, son of God, Ward versus Edwin Rodriguez.
La Bamba.
He wasn't La Bamba on this night because he got systematically broken down. Just to start off with, he did not make weight. They were contracted at 168. He came in at 170. Then he had to adhere to a weight limit on fight night, which was 180. He couldn't be any more than 180. And if you've seen the fight, he is a big guy for that division, and he's moving up to 175. But in this one, he didn't stand a chance. The fact that he might have been a little bit drained, and then he was just outclassed stylistically versus Andre Ward, just spelled doom for Edwin Rodriguez. Now, he tried to make it rough. I mean, he rushed Andre Ward. He tried to, fight a little dirty, use roughhouse tactics. And Andre Ward, being the fighter that he is, did not let that deter him. And he answered in kind because for him, you're just not going to rough him up. You're not going to fight dirty because he can answer in the same way and do it better than he can. So in the fourth round, things got extremely rough. This was way beyond chippy, where there was some wrestling between Rodriguez and Ward. The ref stepped in. Rodriguez threw a punch which actually clipped the referee, and referee was like, hold on, screw this. Stopped it. 2-point deduction from Ward, 2-point deduction from Edwin Rodriguez. Suggested a fine, and that anyone was one foul away from disqualification, which was a good thing because we didn't want to see an ugly match. You want to see a boxing match. And this is when Ward started to really shine. He utilized a hard, stabbing power jab that landed on his mark every time he threw it against Rodriguez. And that pretty much set up the rest of the fight because from that jab, he was able to throw uppercuts, a lead left hook, or he threw a lead left hook. And once he started to unleash that right hand, it was over for Rodriguez. Everything, at one point, I believe in the 6th round, the land count was 24 to 3. I mean, he was just outlanding him. And there was one point where he got hit with a left hook, and his chin went behind his left shoulder. That's how hard he get hit. And I got to give him kudos because he did make it through the fight because he took some hard shots.
I think that a lot of that had to do with him being so big. He was already a light heavyweight in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
And while Andre Ward isn't a knockout puncher, you could see that those punches were landing hard, they were landing forcefully, and I don't think any super middleweight would have stood up to those punches that Edwin Rodriguez stood up to last Saturday.
Oh, no.
So you gotta, take your hat off to him for that. And I think in round 8, in the midst of that beating, Roy Jones pointed that out. He's like, look, man, this guy is still coming. He's still trying. He knows he's outgunned. We all know he's outgunned. We all knew he was outgunned from the time they signed the fight. But that didn't stop him from trying. And for that, you have to give him kudos for that. He went in there. He gave it everything he had. It just wasn't enough. Sometimes you gotta know. You gotta find out where you really stand. Even if everyone's like, hey, you can't beat this guy. Maybe he lands that lightning in a bottle, Tyson Douglas. That, it happens.
This time it didn't.
No.
With Andre Ward, I mean, he's
too good.
He's too good. The guy hasn't lost since he was 12,
and that's when he hurt his shoulder.
And I mean, really think about it, he was on a 14-month layoff. He hadn't fought since his fight with Chad Dawson. And if he had any ring rust, it's gone, which is scary because it was almost like target practice for Andre Ward. He wasn't marked up. He didn't look like he was out of breath. He looked like he could have went 15 rounds this night. So at this point, we really don't know where he's to go now because Lubamba was the last top 10 opponent, true threat top 10 opponent in this division. So it's kind of hard to say where he would go. There is a big money fight looming against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Still a mismatch, might even be worse. A lot of people
Who knows if he can even make the weight?
Exactly. I mean, that's at 168 in his last fight. He couldn't make 170.
Yeah.
There's some of the up and coming Euros like David. Is it not Giggle?
So the guy that Froch is fighting, George Groves.
Yeah, George Groves and Dia Davis just fought someone else. It's another young up and coming European cat.
I know. Oh, I can't think of his name right now.
And he lost to Groves, so it's.
Yeah.
I mean,
James DeGale.
I'm sorry. Yeah. James DeGale. There's a campmate at Brian Gonzalez Tom Oosthuizen.
Thomas Oosthuizen. Tommy Gunn Oosthuizen.
Yeah, I mean these
from
guys.
South Africa.
These guys are in the 168 division, and you just don't see Andre Ward fighting. I mean, they're not going to bring much money. They're not going to bring much competition. The only people, unless he moves up to 175, if he stays where he at, down the line, Triple G, Gennady Golovkin, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., or even Lucien Butte or Jean Pascal. He's got to move up, but they've got to create an opponent for him.
Yeah, and a lot. I would like to see him stay there and just dominate the class as long as he can, and not just move up just because it's like, hey, you need to move up, because that's kind of like the thing these days. Like, they don't have champions staying at their weight class dominating. Like, I'm planting my flag here. If you want this division, you got to come through me. Everybody's jumping up and down the scales and everything, which, I mean, is cool too, but I just like to see somebody dominate a division and just hold it with an iron grip and not let it go.
But the only problem with this, he's pretty much wiped out that division. And guys,
I mean, he really already has done that.
And you're talking about he fought Chad Dawson, who was the man in his division, then moved down, got knocked out, then went up and got knocked out by Adonis Stevenson. And it's funny because Adonis Stevenson went up to 175.
Yeah.
So at this point, I don't know who's going to come to him besides Triple G, and I don't think he's going to go up.
Yeah.
So it remains to be seen. They have to have a plan because he's a great fighter, great person. He has a good personality. He's confident without being arrogant. He's not ignorant as far as some of the actions that some fighters can have. So, I mean, it just remains to be seen because his profile should be raised and needs to be raised. I think he could be a pay-per-view star if it was promoted properly.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the reasons he tried to leave his promoter, but we're not going to get into that because we got a lot of mixed martial arts action to talk about. So hopefully we can see Andre Ward in a meaningful fight soon. Maybe he gets a Froch rematch, knocks him out so he can stop running his mouth, or he can avenge the loss to Ward, which we don't see happening. But they got to get in the ring and we got to find out. So hopefully that happens. Let's move on to UFC 167, and we're going to do a brief blurb on the some of the undercard fights. Robbie Lawler had a split decision win over Rory McDonald, who was being touted as that next guy. And Robbie Lawler, being a veteran of mixed martial arts, he's back becoming a player again. Tyron Woodley probably knocked Josh Koscheck out of the UFC with a hellacious double right hand. It was beautiful. And then we had the co-main event, which was Rashad Evans versus Chael Sonnen, which was something we covered on our preview video, so we're going to go a little bit more in depth into that, even though it didn't go that long. Go ahead, Rob.
Okay, so this was a one-round TKO. I mean, pretty much what we said. We didn't think it was going to end as early as it did, but Rashad Evans just showed a strength and athleticism advantage. There wasn't much stand-up, but they went into the clinch and they did a lot of wrestling, and Rashad Evans was just able to force Chael Sonnen up against the cage, then down to the mat. It was not that it was no wrestling skill, but I just think his skill plus his athletic advantages just helped him cruise. I mean, he didn't look tired. He didn't look marked up. He was nowhere near worse for wear.
Yeah, and we did mention that in the preview video, how Rashad Evans was the bigger guy. He's also a good wrestler, and there wouldn't be a lot of stand-up because of their styles and the way Chael Sonnen is always in your face. And I think he was the first one to go for a takedown.
That's right.
And Rashad just reversed it, put him down, finished him. Because like we said, he was bigger, faster, stronger. He was the better guy. And Chael Sonnen is one of those guys that he will beat the mess out of all of the contenders and the guys coming up. But once you get him in there with those real elite guys, he just falls a little short. And, there's nothing wrong with that. And unless, I'm sure you got title aspirations. But he really wants Wanderlei Silva, and that's going to be his next fight. So hopefully he can put a beating on him and, get back into the winner's circle.
That's right.
Now, we're going to move on to the main event, which was George St-Pierre, the welterweight champion of the world, versus Johnny Big Rig Hendricks. And this fight had a lot of controversy. When we watched the fight, I wasn't too sure. I was like, hey, I don't know how this is going to turn out. I could see Johnny winning. I could see George winning. I don't know what's going to happen. And then they announced the winner. I was like, okay. And honestly, at first I thought, I kind of walked away. I was getting, packed up, ready to leave. And I thought they announced it as a unanimous decision. I was like, what? I was like, that could have went either way. I can't see, Maybe they didn't give him that much benefit of the doubt. But then I did hear it was a split decision. I was like, okay, I can deal with that. I got a lot more stuff I want to say. But first, I'm going to let Rob say what he wants to say.
All right, so before anyone that watches this video, before we go in-depth in it, it was a very close, probably as close as you're going to see, legitimate close fight that you would see in the UFC, in a championship match. Remember, GSP was coming off a long layoff due to an injury, and that's when Hendricks was working his way up the ladder to face GSP. The guy's heavy-handed. If anything, he was a decent wrestler, but his hands like bricks. And when they landed, GSP was at times visibly hurt. What I saw from Hendricks was his ability to get inside and almost overpower GSP. I mean, he was able to put him up against the cage and land some knees in the clinch to kind of weaken the legs of GSP. And not only that, but he landed some very close shots. Once GSP got close, because Hendricks has very short arms, which is a problem because guys with shorter arms can generate a lot of power. And that's what happened because GSP may have thrown a jab, either Hendricks ate it and countered or kind of used a little bit of head movement and stepped inside of GSP's guard and would throw punches. And I think it was a right hand that hurt GSP at the second round.
It was a
left hook.
Yeah, like a left uppercut.
And GSP was visibly hurt. I mean, he took a stone. That's when Hendricks tried to jump on him. He wasn't able to finish him, but he landed some very good shots. And the left hand was actually there all day. If you listen to Joe Rogan, they were saying that Hendricks was tiring. I personally didn't say that. He didn't have the gas that GSP did, but the more tired he looked, the harder those shots were.
Well, he did slow down a bit. Later on in the fight, the fifth round, he completely laid an egg and just kind of cruised because his corner was like, hey, 5 more minutes and you're the champion. 5 more minutes and you're the champion. I'm gonna get into that later. George did a lot of work. Like, his jab was very effective, as Rob said. He was very effective with his kicks, which is something that I guess, was forgotten in the fight. I mean, he landed a lot of good leg kicks, a lot of quite a few head kicks, a few grazing front kicks, and they both did pretty well in the takedown department. Johnny Hendricks had 2 takedowns. He had one in the first round, and then one in the third round with like a minute left, and didn't really do much with it.
Right.
But then George took him down repeatedly in the 5th round.
That's right.
So, with that being said, this fight was not a robbery. Let me say that again. This fight was not a robbery. And let me tell you why. Alright. Now, most people watching fights, you're watching it from a standpoint of entertainment. You're like, I want to be entertained. I just want to have a good time. I'm hanging out with my friends. You're probably at the bar, sitting on your couch, got some beers. You got some beers. You're not even in your right mind. You a little buzzed. So, now that you're in a sober mind and you're watching this fight, sit down and take notes. Now, me personally, when I watch a fight, maybe because I have a different interest in the sport, I watch it from more of a coach, referee type of perspective. I'm looking at it from a standpoint of what are they doing, how is the person reacting, what are they doing to counteract each other, and what can they do for the next fight as far as improvement or even adjustments in that very fight. I also break it down by rounds. Now, most people kind of just get a feel of how they feel the fight's going. Now, if you do that, you can make an easy case that Johnny Hendricks won the fight because George looked worse for wear. Johnny had the body language of someone who was like, hey, you know, I'm winning, I'm cool, this is good. But if you judge it 5 minutes at a time, and once that first 5 minutes, like round 1, there's 5 minutes in round 1 is over, you forget about that, toss it over. Round 2 is a totally different entity all in itself that needs to be judged. Forgetting about what happened in round 1 because round 1 is over. You judge round 2 only. So then once that happens, you move on to round 3. So with that being said, round 1 and round 2 were very close. You could have scored them for either fighter. A lot of people, because in those first 2 rounds, Johnny was fresh. The commentators was pretty heavy Johnny Hendricks. So you're listening, you hear, oh, Johnny's doing this, Johnny's doing that. But judging in the whole 5-minute spectrum, you got to see who's doing the most work, who's doing the most effective work. And in the first round, it was a wash. Like, both guys had takedowns. Both guys landed some good punches. I think Johnny landed a couple of leg kicks. He did some great knees. Both of them were kneeing each other.
That's right.
I mean, it was pretty much tit for tat. Which, and in that one, you kind of just give it to whoever. And that's kind of how the whole fight was. The second round, the same thing. George is doing great work. He's landing the jab. He's getting in his groove. He gets hurt. Johnny tries to finish him. He can't finish him. George goes back to work. So now you have Johnny Hendricks hurting GSP for about 30 seconds to a minute versus 4 minutes of GSP work. How do you judge that? We had the same issue with the Chavez Jr. Brian Vera fight. How are you going to see that? Some of the judges are going to see the damage that Johnny did. Some of the judges are going to see the work that GSP put in. Because even in Mayweather-Mosley, like, you can see Mayweather was clearly hurt, and clearly hurt twice. That was a more extreme circumstance. But both guys, by the end of the round, they're walking the other guy down. So how much damage did they really do? Now, round 3 was a unanimous George St-Pierre round. He pretty much put it on him with the striking all the way up until like the last 40 seconds when Hendricks got the takedown. He got the takedown, but then George had defense, and he couldn't capitalize off of it. Round 4, Johnny goes back to work. Trips up St-Pierre. He goes down. Johnny gets on him, does some good ground and pound. They get back up. He keeps coming. There's a clear round for Hendricks. Now round 5, the fight's pretty much in the bag. You got 2 real close swing rounds, 2 real good obvious rounds. Now you got the 5th round. And like I said earlier, Hendricks laid an egg in this round. I mean, he got taken down twice. He got head kicked maybe like twice. St-Pierre landed a very good combination, like a 1-2 takedown. He was going for submissions. Johnny did go for 1 submission, but George escaped it. And that won the fight for St-Pierre in my eyes. Now, I was like, hey, if Johnny wins this, it's not, it's not a robbery, because those first 2 rounds, you could give it to either guy. It was that close. Like, there was some good work from both guys, excuse me, in those first 2 rounds. So there's no way that anybody can be like either one of those guys was robbed. St-Pierre squeaked it out this time. That's up for Johnny Hendricks to next time. Excuse me, it's getting late. In the press conference, he says, well, I was only going 70%. I thought that was enough. And Dana White's like, obviously it wasn't. You left it in the hands of the judges. You should have finished the fight, which I agree with 100%. Now, Dana White went off about how he only gave GSP 1 round and blah, blah, blah. I didn't agree with that. But that statement I agree with 100%. This is the biggest fight of your life. You're supposed to leave it all on the line out there.
Especially in the championship round. You're supposed to go all out.
Exactly.
All out as you can.
Yeah. And to help my point, there's an article on this website called scifighting.com, which did an analysis of the first round. They took a picture of every single strike landed for the first round, so you can just judge it for yourself. And really, it was pretty much almost dead even.
And we will put the link for that article down in the description, so check it out.
Yeah, it's a very good read. Now, if you are going to make the case for Johnny Hendricks, you have to bring some facts. Don't just say, well, I just look at him. No. There have been fights where guys take damage, and we know George St-Pierre is a bruiser. He gets hit, he bruises. Like, he was bruised up in the Condit fight, he was bruised up in the Diaz fight, and he really kind of put it on Diaz. So, I mean, that's just the way his face is.
That's right.
And then, like, you can point to fight metrics, because as far as that goes, I mean, you can take it with a grain of salt, obviously, but he did outland St-Pierre. But I personally think outside of that second round, George landed the more significant and more showy strikes. Like, a lot of the strikes that Hendricks was landing was like going through the guard or glancing blows. And most of the swelling came from when he was going for takedowns and Johnny was doing those uppercuts on him. Like we said, the guys got bricks for hands. But judges don't really score those blows. That's like in boxing, like when guys clinch and you see them, they're like doing like this. Judges aren't scoring that kind of stuff unless the guy gets visibly hurt from it. They're just seeing that as busy work, not like you're actually trying to hurt your opponent. And Johnny did land some good elbows in the first round when George was trying to take him down, but I think George still got the takedown. So it kind of,
nullified it.
Right. Thank you. Told you I was getting late. My words, they just leaving me.
Well, here's another one. It was very close. I mean, if you look at the scores, if I'm not mistaken, we're like 28-27 each.
Yeah. Each 48-47.
48-47, I'm sorry. It was like 48-47. They released the card scores. It was unanimous throughout the fight except for the first round. You had 2-4 for Hendricks. You had
3-5
for GSP. I think 2 was clear cut for Hendricks and 5 was clear cut for GSP, at least in my eyes, which meant the first round probably meant everything for this fight. Now, you see it's not, say, split decision 50-45, or like you see in boxing where it's just someone with a really wide one for one person is a really wide person for another one. It wasn't that kind of case. It was the judges saw the same thing except for the first round, and that was so close that you kind of had this like, well, did I like this or did I like this, or what they preferred. I mean, it was almost identical except for the first round. 2-4 to Hendricks, 3-5 to GSP. So that should tell you something, that they're all, actually for once, I don't think I see that so often, they're all seeing the same thing, and the prefaces come to that close first round.
Yep. So let us know what you guys think. Did you think that Hendricks won? Fine. Did you think GSP won? It's fine too. Either way, it's fine. But don't go all fanboy on us and be like, oh, you guys are blind. How could you tell? Da, da, da. Don't do that. Just don't.
And if you really want to get in touch with us, capitalcombat@gmail.com. We're looking for your questions, comments, whatever.
Our Facebook page. That sci-fi article is also on our Facebook page as well. So if I will remember to put it in the description box, but it's also on our Facebook page. So like the Facebook page, you will see it on there.
That's right.
We're getting our logo done soon. Shout out to Ryan Scales of Iron Lion Studios. He'll have that for us soon. Make sure you guys like this video. Make sure you share it with your friends because this was a hot topic. And then you also have a boxing masterpiece that we talked about in the beginning with Andre Ward. Subscribe because we're here, man. We're here all the time. Google Plus, follow us on there as well. And that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. Peace.
This is round one, and you've already lost. They don't seem to see that everything we've done is coming and cost. My fists are on fire. I perform till I perspire. My demons are in a rage. Keep thinking that it's a game. I kick crime, hurricane. I told them I don't play. I'm liquid.
Black Street Fighter.